Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome you to Sierra Nevada students, staff, faculty, friends, and family. My name is Andy Roast, and I'm one of the deans of faculty, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the 2021 Student Symposium. Today's event showcases projects that all started from an idea, a place of passion, held somewhere inside of each one of our students. We all know what it's like to have that thought or that feeling. You've got something to share, something to investigate, something to explore. Now, having that burning inside of you is one thing, but it's something entirely different to do something with it. What we do here at SNU is help students bring forth that passion and work with our faculty and community. Our students are able to develop this into a product. And today, we get to enjoy the fruits of many, many hours of effort that turn these passions into amazing projects. Earlier this week, students presented their work in their discipline-specific symposium. In these forums, faculty selected the best projects to represent their disciplines in this school-wide event. Today, we have the best of the best. And as you will soon see, there are some truly amazing projects. Before going further, I'd like to offer our new president, Dr. Rob to share a couple words with us.
Thank you, Andy. This is a great opportunity, great time of year, as many of you have heard me say before, because I think I've seen every presentation except one, and I'm really excited to see how it plays out today. The most important thing is this is an opportunity for myself to see what students are doing, what is the output from the classroom, how faculty is engaged with students. And it's an opportunity for students to gain self-confidence, self-efficacy about what they're doing. And I've been so impressed. And as Andy has said, this is the best of the best, so I'm really looking forward to this final opportunity to look at the projects and hear from each and every one of you. I want to thank the faculty that's participating today. It's quite a crew. We've got about 8 or 9 faculty members as judges. I think that shows a real engagement with the students, and that's what we're all about here, connectivity, okay, and engaged learning. And I think those are two of the main pillars that I've observed here, is taking the analysis and concepts from the classroom and employing them in the real world in a meaningful and impactful way. So without further ado, I just want to thank each and every student for the quality of the projects and for coming today to show them off, and to the faculty members here that are judging and spending time with students. This has been a great week, a week that I'll remember as my first symposium week at the university. I look forward to many more. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Valley. Pleasure to have you here with us today. So before we get into anything further, I'd like to take a moment and extend some thank yous as well. First, I want to thank the IT team. We have Forrest, Franklin, Steve, and Kevin. You all make this work seamlessly, and this year's event is different. We're virtual. It's a new twist, and just like all the things you always ever do, it makes it work, so thank you. I want to make a special thank you to Nancy Beagle. Nancy is the mastermind behind this event. Your knowledge and expertise makes it all happen, and you keep people like me in line. Thank you. Special thank you to all the faculty who have worked tirelessly over this year and subsequent years, previous year, for all the work that you do, and a special thanks to all the judges here today. We have Suzanne Gollery, Bob King, Shirley O'Connor, Chris Lanier, Jim Scripps, Brielle Bjork, Jonathan Breiter, and Richard Geary. Thank you for joining us today. I want to extend the most important thank you, and that's to our students. This is why we're here. And I know I speak for all of us in the SNU community when I say we're really proud of you. Thank you. So let me go ahead and share some details about the format. Make sure they're all on the same page for how this event's going to work. Each student, when it's their turn, will have 5 minutes to present. You'll have the opportunity to share your screen. As you present, once you hit the 4-minute mark, I'm going to say 1 minute. And it's going to kind of freak you out a little bit, but don't worry, it's just going to be this one little voice and I'll stop. 1 minute. After that, at 5 minutes, we'll end your presentation, or you can end your presentation, of course. Then there will be 4 minutes of question and answers coming from the faculty judges. In that period, we would ask that you stop sharing your screen, again, for that Q&A session. So 5 minutes of presentation, 4 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll have 1 minute to allow for transitions to the next presenter and give our judges some time to keep themselves organized. At the end of today's event, all of the scores will be tallied and the results will be shared to the community Monday through email. Okay? I believe that's the details. We are ahead of schedule, which is always a good thing. So with no further ado, I'm going to pass it off to our first presenter, Clayton Coates. Take it away, Clayton.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Dr. Rose said, my name is Clayton Coates, and today I'm going to be sharing my senior project with it, which is a travel blog. And before I start, I would like to thank Dr. Valley, all the evaluators, and everyone else viewing in from home. Thank you. Now, before I talk to you about my senior project, A Wanderer's Way, I first needed to give you a little backstory as to how it originated, because this project is not necessarily just a project, it's a reflection of my life. Shortly after being discharged from the Marine Corps in 2015, I lost everything. My marriage, all personal belongings, the drive to pursue my personal skills I had gained from my time in the service. So I moved to Tahoe to reinvent myself and become a whitewater rafting guide. This is also when the idea of starting a travel blog originated, to be used as a means to financially sustain my adventures. After a few years, I knew I couldn't continue the lifestyle of ski bumming and raft guiding. I needed a deeper fulfillment out of life. So I searched for colleges near Tahoe that offered an outdoor adventure leadership program, and that's when I found SNU. Since my enrollment, I've learned a great deal in the professional fields of outdoor adventure leadership, journalism, and digital arts. But moreover, I've learned who I want to be as a person. Now, diving into the project itself, I have spent countless hours learning about all these meticulous technical fields, color grading, marketing, search engine frame rates, you name it, all these different things. And not only have I learned about all these different small technical aspects that all go into the grander scheme or picture, but in this time in building the project, I've also created 6 promotional videos for SNU that I will utilize as my media kit so that I can attain employers in the future while doing my blog. I've organized the content of over 27 of my past adventures so I could utilize that content to build the blog. And then I've also revised 19 prior assignments for 2 reasons. One, to have more content to provide to the blog, but also to give my readers and viewers a better understanding as to where I came from and where I'm going, because those 19 assignments include intellectual autobiography that I wrote, an INTD 250, and multiple other products that support why I'm doing what I'm doing. But in all reality, you know, you don't order a meal and then expect to, you know, the whole recipe to be recited to you. You just want to make sure that the food tastes good and you're going to be fulfilled. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the site itself. Now, on my cover page of A Wanderer's Way, this is essentially my hook to the site. I have a video, Finding Fulfillment, which states why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then below that, I have a series of photos that essentially showcase my photography and some of the adventures that I've gone on. And through that, you'll be able to click to the timeline, which I will cover momentarily. Now, I've incorporated my senior portfolio into my travel blog because, as I said before, I have a lot of content in there that, one, gives my readers and viewers a backstory as to where I've gone and why I'm going where I'm going, but also to show prospective employers the kind of content that I can create for them. I've created a timeline page to showcase all the adventures that I've been on up until now, so that once again, readers can gain a better context as to why I'm going in the direction I'm going. And in each one of these adventures, you'll be able to open up and see photos, read a story, or connect to a YouTube video. Looking forward, I've incorporated a map section, and this will allow readers to not only see where I intend to go, but it will also allow them an opportunity to join in if they have the time and are able to. I have a bus build page so that people can follow exactly how I built my bus, my schoolie that I moved into over a year ago. A merchandise page where I can gain passive income from different products I provide. And a contact me page so that if people want to join me on an adventure or know no other story that can be captured, they can reach out to me. Now, what's the point? Now, the point behind my entire blog now is to get people who do not have that fulfillment in their life to go out and seek it, to get out of their comfort zone and get into that learning zone so they can truly progress. Now, the reason why it's so important to me is because since I've gotten out of the Marine Corps, I've had 4 friends who have taken their own lives because they were unable to.
Sorry, there you go. All right, let's pass it off to some Q&A. Go ahead.
Okay, Clayton, thank you so much. I see your project. I see how it has transformed your essence. And I'm still curious if there is a dimension in this project for how it can sort of transform others, right? And I think you were about to speak to that. If there's a kind of public dimension, a kind of social dimension to this, because I think that you really foreground the personal transformation. What about for others? How do you bring them into the learning zone, or how we might define that?
Yes, Dr. King, I was just actually about to touch on that. Since my time out of the Marine Corps, I've had 4 friends of mine take their own lives because they were unable to overcome the experiences that we had while we were in country. So a lot of people in that situation can't see outside of their tunnel vision, and they can't see what the great things in this life that are meant to be appreciated. And if they can't see that, or they won't go out of their way to find it, I will show them. And specifically, I'm talking to veterans who are suffering from PTSD, any sort of disability, or in reality, anyone who is suffering from any sort of mental ailment, anyone who can't see a greater life.
Yeah.
Clayton, you have a really interesting story, and I'm very inspired. I'm wondering, how would you differentiate your travel blog from other travel blogs? Because as you know, there's probably millions of travel blogs out there.
I would say mine would be on much more of the motivational aspect. A lot of travel blogs are just, 10 cool things to do in Italy, or, they showcase specific products they want to do. Mine is more specific to motivating people to get outside and do things out of their comfort zone that they wouldn't normally do. In all reality, when I came to SNU, I had so much room to grow. But I didn't even know that. You don't know what you don't know. But coming here exposed me to so many things, to include just the simple fact of reflecting in all these assignments gave me a deeper breath as to the things I wanted to change in myself. And that internal reflection is what I want to share with my readers and viewers, which is a little bit.
Clayton, can I just follow that up? In the future, do you think you'll have some sort of interactive format for people that are interested in expanding their horizons? Is there some sort of interactive way that you can, you could personally interact with these people and kind of coach them, like a life coach for adventure?
Absolutely. One idea that I've been mulling around, so to speak, is there are cognitive behavioral therapy is actually the leading form of therapy for veterans with PTSD. And veterans undergoing cognitive behavioral therapy, depending on the extent of their PTSD, will go through different programs of different varying lengths. So what I would like to do is set up a working relationship with a someone who provides that training, and then at the very end of their training, send these vets on a culminating experience where they can actually take what they've learned in the program and put it into a real world scenario. For instance, say we go rock climbing. And
that's time for questions and answers. And thank you so much, Clayton. Fantastic work. We're going to allow for a minute here for some transition. And Hunter, you're next. So go ahead and get yourself ready.
Thank you, Andy. Andy, yeah. Interrupt for 1 second. Clayton, excellent. I just want to say something to you. I'd like you to see me afterwards. Okay, there's a couple of people, Jonathan Brider, and I know somebody that would be very interested in what you're doing. Also, you know, Terry Jones is a friend of the university, founder of Travelocity and Kayak. And thirdly, this is an area that we want to get more involved in, creative intelligence, emotional intelligence. And fourthly, with the veterans. Okay, so there's 4 reasons to come and see me. Jonathan, I'm sure you'd agree, and you know who I have in mind to introduce Clayton to. So thank you very much, Clayton.
Thank you, Dr. Valley, and thank you all for listening.
All right, thank you for that. That was great. I'm going to go on and share my screen now. Just want to confirm, can everyone see my screen now? All right. Put it in presentation mode. Get going. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Hunter Allen. I'm a graduated senior from Sierra Nevada University, where I studied environmental science with a concentration in earth science. Today I'll be giving a poster presentation on my culminating project, my senior research. That was entitled Nutrient Diffusing Substrata Limitation in Periphyton Growth from the Headwaters to the Base Point in Lake Tahoe Streams. Yes, that is a mouthful to say and to look at, but it does culminate my project. First, before we really break down my project, we really got to know some of these key words in my title. So first off, nutrients. What are nutrients? Nutrients are the culminating factors of life on our planet. The main 2 I focused in were nitrates and phosphates. They limit life both in terrestrial and aquatic environments. So it's really important to remember nutrients moving forward, specifically nitrates and phosphates. Next, diffusing substrata. Substrata, what is that? That is the benthic level or the bottommost level of any stream or water-bound system. So nutrients and the diffusing substrata. And what is periphyton? Periphyton is also commonly known as algae. Algae is the limiting factor for most ecological networks and aquatic systems. Without it, we do not support life from its lowest levels to its highest levels in aquatic systems. All right, so let's throw it all together. Nutrients, the things that limit life on our planet, and the specific zone, this substrata, the benthic zone of our streams, limitation in periphyton, algae that support all life within streams from the headwaters, the top of the watershed, where water is very pristine and clean and new, to the base point, the lowest point in the watershed, where the water could potentially be contaminated. So now that we have that, we can figure out why I actually did this project. So I'm an environmental scientist, but I mainly concentrate in geoscience and aquatic ecology. Those two fields often overlap with the study of nutrients because nutrients, like I was saying earlier, are naturally occurring and they support life on our planet. The environmentalist in me comes out because nutrients can be manipulated by humans, like other things. We see that in the form of culture eutrophication. Culture eutrophication is the input of unnatural nutrients into systems and bodies of water from human activity. We have seen that culture eutrophication has become one of the implicating factors of the degradation of Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe has obviously degraded in overall health as seen by the transparency record that started in 1968 and has been reduced by roughly 10 meters or more over that time period to our current time. Culture eutrophication, as well as other anthropogenic and human-caused issues, have caused the degradation of our lakes. So where do those degradants come from? Our streams and from our airshed and from other sources. The main ones I focused on were streams. I focused on 4 streams on the north and east shores of Lake Tahoe: Third Creek, Incline Creek, Marlette Creek, and North Canyon Creek. So to culminate everything I just said, I wanted to ask 3 major questions. Number one, What is the limiting nutrient at a single spot, either the head point or headwaters or the base point? Next, does that limiting nutrient change from the headwaters to the base point, or does it stay consistent throughout the entire system? And then finally, can I find any analytical results that show me variation between the headwaters and the base point? Meaning, can I find a variation in growth, which could potentially lead to anthropogenic inputs into our systems? Okay, so what I found is, for number one, I found that 3 of my systems were nitrate limiting, while 1 of my systems was phosphate limiting. The 3 systems that were nitrate limiting were Incline Creek, Third Creek, and Marlette Creek, while my 1 phosphate limiting system was North Canyon Creek. My second question, did I find variation between the headwaters and base point? I found no variation, meaning that if nitrates were the limiting factor at the headwaters, they're also the limiting factor at the base point. Finally, did I find any analytical results that showed variation in growth between the headwaters and the base point? I did not. My data was relatively inconclusive in that form, meaning that growth was very consistent throughout the entire stream. We can get more into depth with my methods section and my results and what I found, and our Q&A section, which is about to happen.
Thank you, Hunter. Okay, that's done. Any questions? And go ahead there. Thanks, Hunter. Suzanne.
Okay, I'm facing the microphone. Hunter, when I look at your box and whisker plots for all of the creeks except for Third Creek, I don't see, I see a lot of overlapping in the boxes, not even just the whiskers, but the whole box. So I was wondering how you can say that whether nitrates or phosphates are limiting. I don't see how your data holds up. So I was wondering how you did your statistics.
Right. So at the end of the day, I ran 2-way ANOVA summaries for all of my systems. Those 2-way ANOVA systems would compare control versus a nutrient type. When you do that, you have 2 rows, 2 columns. Whenever you get the lowest p-value for each type, so you run 3 different 2-way ANOVAs for each system. 1 for nitrates compared to your control, 1 for phosphates compared to your control, and 1 for phosphate nitrate ratio compared to your control. Whatever had the lowest p-value would in turn be the limiting factor of growth for that system. That's how I came with the result of nitrates being for some and phosphates for others. So it varied from system to system and from site to site.
Hey, Hunter. Really interesting. You did a great job. So I'm just wondering, and maybe you said it and I missed it, but why nitrates and phosphates?
So nitrates and phosphates are naturally occurring nutrients that we see within most of our ecosystems. They are formed within our geology and they naturally disperse into our systems. They're the key implicating factors of life, particularly in aquatic systems. Lake Tahoe is naturally an ultra-oligotrophic system, meaning that it doesn't support life very much and it doesn't have very many nutrients in it to start with. So as humans ramp up our activity and we introduce more nutrients through culture eutrophication, we're seeing increased levels of nitrates and phosphates specifically, which increase cyanobacterial growth, primary productivity, and other major issues that can cause degradation to the lake in general. So those are the 2 mains I focused on. Obviously, there's other nutrients that limit life, but nitrates and phosphates were the 2 that I mainly focused in, and I learned that from my internship at the University of Nevada, Reno in the limnology department. Got any other questions for me?
Chris.
Hi, Hunter. This is Chris. I was sort of curious if you found what you expected to find. It sounded to me that the results were less conclusive than maybe you hoped, but that could be my non-science training obfuscating my comprehension.
Right, and that's the wonders of science. You really don't know what you're going to find as you're moving in. So when I first started off the project, I was really interested to see, is there variation between the top of the watershed and the bottom of the watershed? That could potentially lead to, are things being introduced to the system that weren't supposed to be there? Obviously, I only had 1 set of data, even though I had 160 samples that I ran through chlorophyll A analysis. What I did end up finding was that there was limited variation between the headwaters and the base point, which means that I was relatively inconclusive in my findings. But with most scientific research, if it is continued over multiple years, we can grow better data sets and we can grow the project. So I really hope that everything that I built and set up, it will be continued to be done throughout the further years so we can get a better and better data set for it. That's my major hope with my research project moving forward into the future.
Thank you, Hunter. That wraps up the 4 minutes of Q&A. Courtney, you're going to be up, so we'll give the judges a moment here, and then Courtney, you can take over in about 50 seconds. All right, Courtney, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. My name is Courtney Rob, and I'd like to just first say a land acknowledgement that I learn and study and grow here on Washoe land. When I first initially went to college, I received an Associates of Arts in Social Sciences, partially on accident, because I just found myself taking more and more sociology and psychology classes because I was really intrigued by human behavior. And over the years, as I began to observe the world around me, I kind of came to this realization, singular realization, that we're all performing. And I began to conduct these silent internal experiments with people around me. And so to just jump right into my art pieces, my color pencil pieces are meant to kind of provide a structure and a path as rules as we walk through life. For example, the ticket booth, you get a ticket, you stand in line, you see a show. There's a sequence that is required of us to really do anything. So I kind of view ourselves as human beings that we're born, culture gives us a script, the world is our stage, and then society works as an audience and a critic. German sociologist Georges Simmel says, the deepest problems of modern life derive from the claim of the individual to preserve the autonomy and individuality of his existence in the face of overwhelming social forces, of historical heritage, of external culture, and of the technique of life. And so in the same way, like, we all carry this expectation of performance at any given moment in any given space. Just like my speech today, I was given a rubric. So everything we do sort of works on this sort of fundamental understanding of responsibility and structure. My friend Lindsay, who I photographed for my pieces, is a professional Italian-trained clown. She as a person is very subtle, kind, quiet individual, but the moment she puts clothes on for any particular clown, her entire personality changes. And it's almost as if there's this allowance that's given to her where her behavior is no longer dictated by any set of rules. Something that Rick Parsons often says, my art teacher, he says, sometimes your work is smarter than you. So throughout this semester, I kind of began to unravel and create a dialogue for my intentions behind those experiments. A couple years ago for my birthday, I actually conducted a bench experiment where I had a bench in the middle of an empty room. I had people enter for 1 minute, observe the space, and then I photographed them. And throughout that thing where I sort of had theorized in my brain, sort of like certain genders would react certain ways, certain ages would react certain ways, certain types of people would react certain ways in the space. But I didn't really understand how to go about documenting that or sort of breaking it down. And so through my time photographing Lindsay, I kind of pulled away from just my simple desire as a 10-year veteran photographer and realized that there's a lot more underneath it, that I had a greater desire to understand why people do things and why some people feel freedom to behave themselves and some people feel quite prohibited. And I really feel like we have a responsibility to society to teach each other that we're allowed to simply be ourselves. Pierre Bourdieu, French sociologist, says, the function of sociology, as of all science, is to reveal which is hidden. And in the same way, Zygmunt Bauman, a Polish sociologist, says the task of sociology is to come to the help of the individual. And we have to be in service of that freedom, he says. And so that's sort of what I'm learning in my work, and what I want to do as I move forward is I want to use my art as a way to document society's behavior, to form conversation around it, and then ultimately to be something that we can use to help people see themselves and to be more of an individual and be themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Any questions? Bob.
Hi, that's great. I really love that presentation because it's so conceptual, and that's kind of where I'm at always with my studies and what I teach. I went up to the Prim Library, third floor, and I saw your art there. Performance, is that a kind of material representation of what you're talking about now?
Say that last part again, sir.
Does that work kind of stand in, really the artist statement that you had, does that kind of also fit in with what you're saying now?
You know, I'll be honest, I don't think so. This semester has been a dramatic growth for me as an artist and as an individual. And it's interesting as I read my artist statement that I wrote 2 months ago, and I began to continue to explore why I make art and what I want to do with it. My artist statement has constantly been shifting and changing. I do think in a lot of ways, how I visualize the world is very minimal and simple. We complicate our behavior, and we complicate our expectations, and we complicate everything. When in reality, if we just simply love others as they are, and we simply love ourselves as we are, we can provide a simplicity there. And I think my art sort of demonstrates that in the simplicity of it. And so I'm hoping to sort of marry that creativity and artistic value to the simplicity of how we really should be looking at each other, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I was really struck by how you used the idea of nonchalance, especially because in this formulation of your project, you're hinging, so much hinges on responsibility now. And I wonder if nonchalance kind of fit in with responsibility, or if responsibility is a new direction. I guess that's what I'm kind of curious with now, if you can say that sort of briefly.
Yeah. I think in the same way, like I am quite nonchalant in general because I recognize my responsibility to love others well. I think to me, by becoming more nonchalant to the world around me, I'm opening up myself to be myself. And so first I become a representation of how I want others to love themselves by not caring what other people think. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
That's great. That's a really interesting connection for me to think about too. Thank you.
Great.
Richard. Hey, Courtney. Richard Gier here.
How are you, sir?
Hi, how you doing? Look, you mentioned structure and how we get ourselves involved in structures, and those can be somewhat limiting in our lives. You got yourself into a structure today. You mentioned the rubric. You've got people sitting around that are going to be judging your project. Is there an aspect of structured living that you may actually want to subject yourself to get where you want to go in life?
Absolutely. I actually had a conversation about this with Rosie Hackett. You know, I'm 34, I'm a military veteran, and I'm just now completing my bachelor's degree. Because in a lot of ways, I find it really difficult to follow the structure of society because my creativity and the way that I am created doesn't quite allow for me to like fall in line with a lot of the structure that's necessary to basically be an adult and live in the world that I live in. And so I think for many, there is a requirement. In order for me to pursue what I want to pursue, I must complete a bachelor's degree. And so I think, yeah, I think that there's responsibility there, but yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
All right, so Luke and Caden, you'll be up next. Let's give the judges a few moments to get themselves organized. All right, I think we're all set. Luke and Caden, take it away.
All right. How's our sound and how's it look? You see it? Perfect. Cool. So I'm Caden Hansen.
And I'm Luke Marianne Pedersen, and we came up with the business plan for Bell Cow Biocycling. To start off, we're going to talk about the problem, and the problem we had the chance to focus on throughout our business plan was the United States broken waste management system, and in specific, how we throw all of our green organic waste into landfills. And generally what happens is when that content sits in landfills, it decomposes anaerobically, releasing a harmful methane gas into our atmosphere. And methane is 23 times the global warming potential when compared to CO2, which is crazy. And we go into how this is a waste of a potential valuable resource.
So the current system looks like this. So organic waste from restaurants, residential areas, and grocery stores are all hauled off in the same garbage truck that hauls plastics and everything else, and it gets tossed in a landfill. However, we want to divert this organic waste and use it as a potential resource. So through Bell Cow Biocycling, we will have anaerobic digestion machines, and we will work as a collection service of this organic waste from these three areas, process that organic waste through these machines, creating a natural gas that we use to power our facilities and our natural gas powered truck fleet. And we also will create an organic fertilizer that will be our main product that we will sell into the fertilizer market.
Yeah, so overall, our company will be based in Carson City, Nevada. And what we're going to be doing is collecting organic waste from places like Incline Village, Carson City, and surrounding areas. And we will then truck that waste back to our on-site facility and process it, thus creating the fertilizer and renewable natural gas, and then sell that natural gas to the masses.
Sell the fertilizer to the masses.
Sorry.
And this is a good visual to look at. This is an example of a digestion machine. This one is created by the company Impact Bioenergy. It's called the Nautilus. You put food waste and liquid waste in and get that fertilizer and energy output.
Our first target market that we're going to be looking at are those big commercial farmers, whether it's small, medium, or large. And if they generate like a $100,000 or less, or over $500,000 on the large scale, we want them. We want to attack them and bring them into our market
and sell the fertilizer to them. So we also want to identify the second target market, which is the hobby gardeners and the sustenance farmers. This can be anyone from me who has a couple plants in our house, and we want a little fertilizer to, make them happy. But it also can be the person with a small garden in their backyard that produces a small amount of food that they intake in their own diet.
And in our business risks, we feel like it's important to identify some of our barriers. And in general, there are few barriers to enter this kind of business. And it also means we don't have any intellectual property because we are using somebody else's machines. It's also very capital intensive in the very beginning. It's going to run us right about $2.5 million to start it up. And we're also a little bit worried about how we're going to price our product, because there are so many differentiations between different fertilizers and how we can price it for our like commercial side and like the individual consumer. There's there's also a bunch of regulations in the market these days, and we just need to make sure we have a proper product.
So this is a look at some potential numbers for a business like this. So with one digester, we will create over 340,000 gallons of liquid fertilizer in 1 year, running that machine at full capacity. And if we sell all of that fertilizer, we have the potential of paying for that digester in the first year. And these are just some numbers that we can look at a little bit later if you would like to.
And this is where it gets pretty exciting. It's no longer an idea. It's going to be put into. We can talk about that in Q&A if we would like.
Thank you very much.
All right, we got a question from Sherry.
Hi, Sherry.
Yes, I'd like you to describe what you're going to do at Sierra Nevada University.
Okay,
great question.
This past semester, I was in service learning, and I had the opportunity to work on a culminating project. And my idea was to initially just start a composting system like we have in the past. A couple times, it's been done a couple times, but it seems to just go by the wayside after that individual graduates or something. But me and Cayden have been working on this business for a long time throughout the semester. And we thought the potential to have one of these machines on campus poses so many opportunities. It's going to be like waste diversion. So we're going to be moving more towards carbon neutral as a school. And it also cuts costs in waste. So we won't have to use like half of our dumpsters, and that'll cut down like $27,000 yearly. And
the natural gas that gets produced can be pumped right back into the school, powering lights, the heated sidewalks, and anything like that.
We could potentially make our kitchen a fully closed loop system, which would be pretty phenomenal.
Who's funding the machine?
Okay, so I've been doing a lot of research into grants and stuff. And so the distinction here is the machine that we brought up, the Nautilus, isn't going to be the one we would be installing at school. The machine is called the Horse, and it processes how much? I don't remember.
It would be better. It would be better suited for our campus versus a wide area like what we would use with the bigger digesters. And the bigger ones that we were thinking for our company are run around 1.2 million, but that's not the one we're going to get on campus. The one we want on campus is right around that $100,000 mark. And researching grants, we believe there's potential to, apply for those and potentially get one on campus.
There are a couple EPA grants that will almost completely cover the cost of the machine and everything else coming behind it.
And we can use that machine on campus as a little pilot program for us to prove the concept, to play with the output and play with that fertilizer and product and get a consistent product that we can research and potentially, see what we can do in the market with selling that product. Any other questions?
Chris?
I have a question for you. Which is, it seems like one of the challenges scaling this up is essentially sort of disaggregating the waste from the streams that already exist. That people are already kind of putting, mixing the waste together with the non-organic waste. And I'm kind of curious, like how you would approach kind of pulling that organic waste out of the waste stream that it's already in, from whatever restaurants to just kind of personal, whatever trash and recycling containers.
Sure. So that's a great question. So at the end of the day, we are a waste collection service at the beginning of the day, I mean. And so we are collecting that waste just like a waste management company would do. We could set up bins in residential areas and in neighborhoods outside of like a separate bin for that organic waste on the outside of the restaurants. And we could, and that's also a potential for another revenue stream, potentially getting. Great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
This has been a blast.
Thank you very much. Great job. All right, so Kara, you're going to be next. Go ahead and get yourself ready, and we'll give the judges a couple moments here.
Okie dokies.
Okay, Kara, I think it's your time. Take it away.
Okay, hi, my name is Kara Campbell, and my project is about the need for a new form of river management on dam sections of rivers. So I grew up whitewater kayaking and rafting down on the Kern River at the bottom of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, and I feel like growing up on the river all this time has given me a pretty extreme sense of self-identity. And then over the years, I've watched the river systems get polluted, which I feel in turn strips them away from their identity. So in the position that I was in, I was wondering how I could help protect the longevity of the river ecosystem. So that really pushed me to dedicate my education to river management and river advocacy. And over the time that I have been studying river management, I've noticed that there's some significant flaws in river management as a whole. And that is, one, we're not accounting for climate change in most older protected rivers. And two, we're not accounting for dam management whatsoever in river management, which is a very large issue because there's over 90,000 dams on America's rivers. So basically, I took, in pursuit of my senior project, I took this issue to Andy, and Andy was very generous and kind of let me piggyback off of a project that he was doing on the Truckee River about nuisance algae growth. So what I did was I just chose a section in the watershed that led me to the Little Truckee River right here below Stampede Reservoir and above Boca Reservoir. And I just did that to limit some variables like water rights and stuff like that, so I could really just focus in down on that ecosystem. So dams, Stampede Reservoir and dams alike create a number of different issues for the river ecosystem. Mostly they disrupt nutrient cycling and sediment distribution, and they completely eliminate the natural flow regime, which is really what my project is focusing on. So eliminating the natural flow regime, the natural flow regime is the magnitude, frequency, duration, timing, and then rate of change for discharge. Or you could kind of think about it as like maybe the way the river would flow if there wasn't a dam there. Eliminating that natural flow regime also in turn eliminates natural disturbances like floods and droughts that the river ecosystem actually needs to be healthy. So, and that eliminating those natural disturbances actually causes a number of other issues. But in the context of the Little Truckee River, we're seeing this habitat that is being created that is welcoming to abundant algae growth. So to combat this issue through the context of river management, I created 3 different hydrographs that mimicked the natural flow regime of Sage Hen Creek, which is a undammed creek in the Truckee River watershed that has been documented for over 50 years. You can see right here, this is the 2009 drought year. And this orange line down here is Sage Hen Creek. You can see it has a really pretty shape to it. It's gradually coming up to a peak in May, and then it gradually comes down. This is what natural systems look like in the Sierra because we're primarily snowmelt based. So you can see that peak right there in late May when those temperatures are getting higher. And that's a really accommodating shape for ecosystem health and native species in that ecosystem. If you look at this purple graph, this is what was actually released from Stampede Reservoir in 2009. And you can see it's very artificial looking. It doesn't look anything like the natural flow regime whatsoever. And again, that is creating a habitat that is very welcoming to that abundance algae growth because there's not enough variance in the flow to distribute and to flush out those extra algae things. So this blue one is what I created. Basically, I just mimicked the shape of Sage Hen Creek, and while using the same amount of water that actually was released. So the blue graph and the the purple and the blue graph have the same amount of water in them. I just redistributed the way that the water was coming out of the dams. I think that this is very important for the future of river management because it's an accessible practice of river management that can be implemented for any dam, and it's far more cost efficient than restoration projects, which can start at minimum $1 million. It has the potential to restore ecosystem equilibriums, and it's accommodating to multiple factors like climate change, human needs, and the ecosystem. And it could be used at any dam that wants it. So.
And that's
okay, great.
Thanks, Karen. Questions? Riel.
Hi, Kara. Are there other river management entities that are using this model with success?
Yeah, so I don't think that there is any one watershed that is using this kind of management practice. It's not something that you have to do regularly. Natural floods happen about every 5 to 7 years, so this isn't something that needs to be implemented every single year, but there have been studies about how basically designed floods or prescribed flows can benefit the ecosystem. Like in 1983 in the Grand Canyon, there was a release of water from Grand Canyon Dam. And actually what they found out is that the ecosystem really needs those floods and droughts to basically maintain the equilibrium. And they found that it like flushed out all these invasive species and it rebuilt the beaches. And yeah, so it's not used in a general context of river management, but it could.
Let's go, Chris, Ellen?
Yeah, I do. One thing that hadn't occurred to me, because I saw your presentation before, one thing that just occurred to me now is if you're modeling the appropriate flow from sort of a comparable source, comparable river source that has something, you're looking at this retrospectively saying, oh, okay, this is how it flowed in this year, and so you could build a more appropriate graph to that. I kind of wonder how it works like in a moving system in a year where if you're using a kind of a comparable natural undammed stream as a baseline, how do you kind of map what you're doing by the dam to something that's sort of in process, where you don't have the whole kind of annual structure of that graph in place? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's why I actually designed 3 different hydrographs, and I wrote a paper that is basically supporting this theory of river management. So those years that I modeled was the 2017 high water year, the 2019 normal water year, and then the 2009 drought water year. So when the water master prescribes that year as a high water, a normal water, or a drought year, they could use those reference graphs to help model the flow releases. Ideally.
Jim.
Hi, Kara. I enjoyed your presentation. How do you resolve problems with conflicts with water needs downstream? So
yeah,
agriculture has needs and civic water use has needs, and they need it seasonally and periodically. And how does your model work with that?
So that's a really great thing about the model is that it's very accommodating to multiple factors. And you can really change it to whatever needs you're trying to basically accomplish. So if you needed water rights in there, then you could release that base flow as the base flow and then also hit that peak that you're needing. So you can do that for water rights if you needed to add more water in there, or say climate change if you're in years of droughts, if you have heavy years, and stuff like that. So it's very flexible to every single dam that if they were to implement that kind of management system. You could change it.
Okay, great. Well done, Kara, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are at our 55-minute, we're gonna take a break right here. I've got 1:54. Let's take a break, allow everybody to stretch their legs and do what they need to take care of, and we'll convene at 2:05.
Great job, guys, so far. Great job.
There were times when
Hold on.
That's new then, that's changed.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It's 2:05, and we're going to jump into our next presentation. Hannah, you are up.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. My name is Hannah Friedholm, and I put together a video for you guys. I have shut my balcony because I do not want to hear the weeping. But from behind grey walls, nothing else is heard but the weeping. There are very few angels that sing. There are very few dogs that bark. 1,000 violins fit into the palm of my hand. But the weeping is an immense dog. The weeping is an immense angel. The weeping is an immense violin. The tears muzzle the wind. Nothing else is heard but the weeping. As an artist, I'm always questioning what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I've always worked with my hands, especially in clay, being my main medium. For this body of work, I've created sculptural assemblages from ceramic, as well as found objects. In this work, I'm aligning the emotional and psychological aspects of mortality and the universal experience of grief. For me, my work is navigating the raw response to loss, and I hope that it allows the viewer to connect with their own sensibilities. I think about absence and presence and the void between a lot. For me, making this work is easier than having the conversation. Therefore, I feel like the gravity of my emotion is expressed through this coping mechanism. I've always been interested in ideas and rituals involving preservation, so dipping these dead birds and crabs into soot, firing them and preserving their physical presence makes sense. In a way, I'm stopping the decaying process and paying reverence to these beings. For me, the clay takes on the form of these once living creatures, safeguarding their ashes inside. This current body of work has allowed me to address loss and heartache by creating and connecting to the moments that have passed. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about universal grief. I think with our current times, we've all experienced a lot more grief, and in a much more isolated fashion. People are having to grieve and mourn in a much more trying way, not that it's not hard anyway. And I think that it's universal, but society wants to rush people to kind of get over it. And I think that we need to kind of re-examine those social norms.
1 minute.
Okay. Yeah. And then looking back in time, we used to give people longer, like back in the Victorian era. It was normal for a widow to grieve for 2 years and wear a specific dress code. And I just think that we kind of need to allow people to do that. Yeah, and that's it.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
Questions?
I guess I have one. In your flyer, you dedicated this to your brother. And I was wondering what of him we see in the pieces that you chose to display. Is there some of his art?
Yeah, well, that music that was actually playing in the video was his music. He was a musician. But yeah, I think I was thinking about my brother all the time when I was making all of that work. So I feel like everything in there is him. There's a lot of memories that it's in like a way that my memory, but like weird objects that come out of that memory, if you understand what I mean. So even though it's kind of abstract, it's thinking about him as I'm making all of the time.
Wow.
Grief, maybe it has a universal dimension in the sense of the way in which humans feel it, and maybe it's particular, maybe it's historical and it's transformed over time. I don't know how you feel about that. But I'm wondering if you think now, if there is a reason why we can't mourn the same way or express grief the same way. If it's something about our humanness, or if it's more particular to, say, current social structure, or if you're thinking in an entirely different way about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's that we fear upsetting someone. We fear saying the wrong thing, because I think that grief puts you in a very awkward space. Everything is weird from that point onwards, and you have to navigate and negotiate everything again. So I think it's just our own fear of upsetting someone else or trying to fix this problem that isn't fixable, when it's just time and talking, I think, that people need.
If I can extend that, is there something, that takes away that time and that ability to talk, that is, maybe it's always been universal, or is it something very specific to, let's say, our way of life in a modern, post-Victorian, wherever you might want to date that? See what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that the time thing, I don't think you can get rid of the time thing, but for me, it was making the work that has helped or does help, and will continue to help. That puts me in a different place where I have something to focus and have an output, rather than like being in a really dark place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of comparing and contrasting your work with Courtney's, and I guess I just have this question, is I wonder if grief is like this raw emotion, right? Whereas she is saying we're all kind of in this performance all the time. So I wonder if you get over grief, or do you just start performing more?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what we do. I think that, yeah, you feel like you are supposed to be over it at a certain time, so then you just act like you are. You say that you're okay, because no one wants to hear that you're not,
That time, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you, Hannah. All right, Emma, you're going to be next. We'll take a second here to get ourselves organized.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, Emily, go ahead and take it away.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Tesmer, and I recently completed my undergraduate studies earning a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies with concentrations in journalism and communications. And for my senior project, I wanted to incorporate all of the new tools I gained from SNU and my previous experience as a musician and sound designer. I'm also passionate about helping illuminate the challenges that First Nations people are dealing with in the United States. And I would definitely consider myself an advocate for our planet and all the struggles we are currently facing. One of my most sacred beliefs is that our First Nations people can help show us how to regain some kind of harmony with our planet. And the documentary Walking with My Sisters came about when I experienced the majesty of our local Washoe women in a photo shoot taken for the Tahoe Quarterly in Olympic Valley. And the photos, which I originally saw on Facebook, completely blew me away. You know, the resonance of the women and their presence on their ancestral grounds inspired me to contact the tribe and go deeper. I was introduced to Kara James, who was the narrator, Becky Smokey, Sue Coleman, and consequently reached out to Ron Cohen, the COO of the resort, to hear everyone's story and perceptions around the upcoming name change. Conducting interviews and creating connections, shooting video and editing, composing music for the film's score was very inspiring. And I felt quite honestly like it was a homecoming of sorts because I've always wanted to get my music into film. Realizing that it was time to take these next steps to make the films and then put the music in them was really, really empowering. And I'm looking forward to my next project, which is going to be focusing on the legal personhood of water, which I heard a lot today already that, you know, perhaps there could be a collaboration there. And the feedback that I received from Squaw Alpine and the Washoe Tribe and PBS Reno was super positive, which was really reassuring to me and exciting as well. And I'm currently in negotiations with PBS around their airing of the documentary itself. And I also wanted to speak a little bit about, we had a premiere at SNU that many of you attended actually, and Jim Scripps helped me put it together. And it took place in early March, and we had some expert panelists involved, such as Amber Torres, who's in the center there, Georgina Lightning, who's off to the left there, who's a Cree film producer from Alberta, Canada, which is amazing. And then on the far right is Kara James. She was the narrator of the film itself. And one really cool thing that I wanted to share about Kara was that she had boundaries around what she, you know, how she wanted her contribution to look like. And that was a really a neat thing to be able to honor and then create simultaneously, respecting her boundaries. And as a side note, after the premiere, where we had Georgina Lightning and Amber and Kara and Jim and all of you, Georgina invited me to do a class called Impact Production. So it's really cool how when you're on the right path, it just kind of, the doors open and you just keep on moving forward. And so I'm really grateful, you know, to the Interdisciplinary Studies program. I mean, I interviewed Georgina Lightning back in the day, and she was part of my class. And now look, you know, it's just amazing how these connections are made. And I would just like to close by saying thank you so much to my professors who taught me so much, and all of you, everyone whose classes I was in, I learned so much from. And I'm honored to have been a part of this symposium, and I've also learned a lot from all the presenters today. So I just want to say thank you so much. And that's all I got.
Thanks, Emily.
Yeah.
Questions? Richard. Hey, Emily, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, my friend? Good to see ya.
As you know, I'm the intellectual property guy, and I'm just curious as to, talking to PBS, I'm assuming you have registered this work with the U.S. Copyright Office, have you?
That's a very good question. And actually, I have not done that yet. I need to do that. I
want you to come and see me because before it airs on PBS or anywhere else, I want you to get it registered, okay?
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Good to see you.
Chris.
Hey, Emily. I would actually like to give you an opportunity to unpack a little bit more about what the content of that documentary was, because it's a really strong piece of work, and you've sort of talked around it. But if you could go into what the topic was and what you sort of learned about it, as you process of making it.
So we all know that the name squaw, or some of us do, some of us don't, is considered derogatory by many First Nations women primarily because the term came about during the colonial era, and I'm not going to go into what it means, but it's basically a derogatory, misogynistic term for a woman. And what I found is that, the village, the resort, and Ron Cohen also shared the same belief system that the word needed to be removed from the name. And just how important it is to get into the shoes of other people who are experiencing this kind of racism and misogyny. And so, in interviewing Ron and finding out the true origin of how the naming actually took place was really eye-opening. And then also hearing from the women, what it means to them to be back standing on their ancestral grounds with a clear conscience in their hearts. These are the kinds of moments that are, cathartic. And as a filmmaker, as an artist, as an empath, to be able to provide a platform, for these women to speak their truths was like amazing. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I'm so honored that I was the one that got to do that, So, and it's really on the macro instead of the micro. It's like, there's this whole obsession with cancel culture right now, and it's like, it's not cancel culture when you're taking something hurtful out of the equation that hurts other people. When are we going to learn, that getting into the shoes of other people is so important, and to put ourselves in that same position. What if it was your daughter? What if it was your grandmother? What if it was a woman in your family that had to confront that word day in and day out, knowing the true origin of the meaning? And so, I hope that answers the question. It's hard to throw all that into like a little tiny talk, but thank you for helping me to go there, Chris. I really appreciate it.
We have just a little bit for one more question.
Yeah. Real quick, this is Suzanne. It seemed to me rewatching the film again today that Ron Cohen said his bit fairly uninterrupted. I didn't see a lot of cuts in there. How much did you talk about that, and how many takes did you have to do to get him speaking from the heart like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sorry? Am I done?
We ran out of time. We got the question out, but...
Yeah. Maybe you can answer me in the chat.
I will do that.
Thanks, Emily.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. Deja, you are next. Why don't you go and get yourself ready, and we'll give the judges here a couple minutes.
Thank you. Hold on one second. Let me share the screen.
Suzanne answers a lot.
All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, let's give the judges just a couple more seconds here. All right, Daisy, all yours.
Cool. First off, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to share with you guys today my BFA show. My name is Dejanurai Nianghita Mayestas, and I have found liberation in my loss. You see, it's important to understand where I come from because my artwork has everything to do with it. I come from Denver, Colorado, and this is actually an image of my current childhood home, not as it stands today, but as it stood in October. And having and growing up in a 2-bedroom household with 10 people living there on average the entire time growing up, it's hard. There's a lot of people you see, there's a lot of characters that come into play, but one thing that I can always attest to is that even though I had a lack of financial security, I had more than anything my family's unending, unrelenting love. And so that is the only thing that has pushed me through and allowed me to find this liberation in losing my history and losing different aspects of my identity because of taking on an American ideal. And so a lot of the times these images are of the people and the communities that I have thrown myself into. That is everything my artwork is about. My artwork isn't just about the loss that I have, it's the loss of my community and the fact that creating work about this, about these emotions is hard. It's hard because I'm telling a story much larger than myself. I'm standing before you as a first-generation college graduate from my own family. I'm standing before you as a first-generation college graduate for my Boys and Girls Clubs back home, for the students that I have touched lives with that I don't even realize. And so my artwork stands as much more than just what you see before you today. And it is this poetic sense that I'm trying and I'm working my all to sit here and bridge the gap between the impoverished and the privileged. And it's hard because you have to figure out how to do it. You have to figure out how to do it in a way that is poetic and true to your own identity, your own self, that is true to your people, that is true to your family, the people that provided for you, brought you up. And for me, it is in the laser cutting images on tortillas, breaking bread with my family, understanding that the only thing that saved me in life, even though I wanted to give up multiple times, where I didn't even see myself graduating high school, let alone getting ready to graduate college. It's that vulnerability, that rawness, that unending desire to continue to push, to strive, to live. It's what drives not only me every day, but my artwork. I'm creating these monuments for my people, my community, in order to somehow find a way to tell the privileged that it's not an issue of money, it's not an issue of race, it's an issue of human effort, it's an issue of humanity. And I do this in very small, subtle hints of, churches, religion, very small, subtle hints of the clothing I wear on the daily, and addressing all of these issues with identity within my multidisciplinary arts. It's hard. It's a weight. It's a burden that I can't even begin to express to you. Is something that hurts, but drives me every day to go to class, to get assignments done, because it's no longer just about me. And I realized that. I came to college for that reason, and I chose to be an artist because I get the most say in my story, in my people's story, in sharing this vulnerability with you all. And it's in sharing my story that I've realized I'm going to create change. I'm not just an artist. I'm a human being who intends on creating much larger change. And having a BFA show, being a student in the arts, I have the ability to do whatever it is I want to with my degree and create the change I wish to see in the world today.
All right, thank you, Deja. That's it for time. All right, couple questions. Sherry?
Deja, how did you produce those tortillas, and can you talk about the symbolism?
Yes. Okay. The tortillas themselves are laser cutted. And with the laser cutter, it's going in through Photoshop and then Illustrator and using all these different, digital senses and then putting it into the laser cutter, which takes a lot of patience because you're dealing with the machine and the connectedness. But also the imagery behind it is an actual image of my family from when we were first younger. One of our first family portraits after, the introduction of my younger siblings. And so having them be on tortillas is so important because it's a tradition that has been passed down from my family, the making of tortillas. And that is my history. That is where I come from. That is my Mexican heritage. That is what I hold on to, what tethers me between my grandparents and the physical time standing before you today. And so it's super important to have them on the tortillas because it holds that momentum within my grandma and what I'm passing down to my siblings. Because at this point, I'm not just passing down, the making of tortillas. I'm passing down the making of human beings. I'm passing down the courage to persevere for my siblings and, my community in general. So yeah, the tortillas are just the start. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Jim?
Yeah, hi Deja.
Hello. Good to see you too.
Talk a little bit about the relationship between, I saw in your installation a relationship between gender and religion, and maybe you can talk a little bit about how you process that, for that project at least.
Yes, absolutely. So there is this idea of gender, especially within a Mexican culture and coming from, the Mexican descent. There's this idea that the women have to uphold the family, have to take care of the men, have to do all this stuff and, do it with a smiling face, do it out of the love of their hearts. And so it's this idea that is everything I identify with, why I'm a strong female character, and that a lot of people aren't prepared for a strong female character. A lot of people aren't prepared for a woman to have such a voice, be so articulate in the sense that I'm willing to put everything on the line for the people I love, willing to put everything on the line for my future, my identity, my role within society. And so there is a lot of it that plays into all the little key aspects of, my, as you can see on my screen, like my outfits, the shoes I wear, the earrings I wear, and all the blankets that I have set up on that is like my grandma's, both of them from both sides, and taking that role of being not only Mexican, but being a woman and being in charge of my own destiny, being able to tell my own story. And that's, I think, the biggest part I wanted to bring out and display in my show is that I can do it, that no matter what, being a woman has never stopped me, being Mexican has never stopped me, being a minority has always pushed me further.
Hey, Deja.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, nice to see you. You've kind of positioned yourself as a translator here in a way. And certainly where the work is situated right now, a translator from your home community to a privileged.
We're running out of time, Chris. Maybe you can get your question out, and then maybe Deja can answer in the chat.
Let's just, I'll talk to her later.
Thanks, Deja.
Thank you.
All right, Jose, you're up next. To get yourself situated.
Alrighty. All right, can everybody see my poster?
Yeah, go ahead and take it away, Jose.
All right. If I get some technical difficulties, I apologize. I'm trying to work 2 screens at the same time. But okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Jose Ortiz. This is my senior research project on the effects of prescribed burns on saplings and fire suppression in the North Lake Tahoe Basin. So just some a brief introduction. As we all know, during when people first colonized Tahoe, we found huge, we stripped this place of its resources. We really wanted lumber. By doing that, there's consequences. So basically, you have 4 layers. You have the estuary layer, the canopy layer, and then the understory layer. By altering the estuary layer and the canopy layer, that allows the understory layer to take over and grow more rapid because they're getting more sunlight because those big trees have been chopped down, and also they don't have to compete with those big trees for resources. And also by having fire suppression, obviously they didn't want their new civilizations to burn down, so they stopped these natural processes. Here in the Sierra Nevada, we would go through wildfires every 5 to 25 years. It was a pattern that kept intact the forest structure, but we prevented that. So on top of that, we were getting more flammable trees growing in the forest, such as white firs. So there's a lot of dangers associated with changing the forest structure. They're more susceptible to diseases. It promotes less biodiversity. And if there is a wildfire, it is stronger, as we've seen in the past years. One example of this is the Capitol Angora fire. But because of this event, Tahoe has been pushing more prescribed burns. They're doing better forest management to prevent the severity of these wildfires. But little has been talked about if these fires or prescribed burns are potentially altering the forest structure to how it's supposed to be. So the purpose of my study was to go into areas that had prescribed burns and an area that didn't have a prescribed burns and compare sapling densities. And I picked sapling densities because they have the potential to reset the forest structure when they grow. And then I also compared litter duff samples from before and after a burn. And litter duff is this little layer on top of the soil that has pine needles and ashes and things like that, which is associated with nutrients. These nutrients go into the ground and feed into the saplings. And then I also compared biomass from before and after a burn using QGIS and NDVI, which I'll get into in a little bit. But for my procedures, so for litter duff, I used the procedures developed by April Shackford. She was a mentor of mine. She worked for the North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District, and she also gave me some data to use for this. So basically what you do is, I don't know if you see this little white square, but we'd go into these coordinates where they did prescribed burns right here, and then we walk 5 meters out from that coordinate and put a white square and then dig up on the sides of it to collect these litter duff samples and measure how thick the layers are. And then for sapling densities, I went into this area that didn't have burns, the North Control right here, and then I compared it to these coordinates where the fire department did prescribe burns. I used these coordinates rather than the whole thing, just to mimic things such as slope and prevent biasness and skewness in my data. And then for QGIS analysis, I took images from the USGS site, specifically NAIP, which is aerial images done by the Agriculture Department. And then I compared it to a year before prescribed burn and a year after the prescribed burn. And NDVI through QGIS allows us to manipulate the pixels by changing the bands of color to infrared and red and subtracting them from each other. By doing this, it heightens vegetation, so green colors and blue colors pop out more in the pictures, and then places that don't have vegetation are brown and black sometimes. So, and then if you take a year from 2020 and a year from 2018 and subtract them, you can actually see growth or loss in biomass, which is what you can see here in this image with the red trees. So right here, a lot of yellow and red means that we've actually lost biomass from 2020 to 2018. Which is expected. You do prescribed burns, it's going to kill off some vegetation. But what threw me off is that it was also seen in the north where there wasn't prescribed burns. This could be due to things such as drought and climate change and loss of snowpack. So there's other factors at play here. Overall, you can see these histograms of the treated and untreated and pixel values associated with those colors. So if you have a high pixel value, it's going to give you green and blue. A low pixel value will give you this yellow and red. And as you can see in the histogram, there's a trend of losing pixel value throughout the years. What we did find, okay, and then doing the 2 sample t-test, we found that there was little difference in litter and duff samples. Oh, is that time? Sorry?
Just to be fair to the other presenters, so they will have to cut you off. But
oh,
thank
sorry.
you, that was great. Yeah, that's okay. But we've got time for questions and answers.
So I have a question that I wrote down while looking at your poster, Jose. If you didn't find more dust where there was burning, where do you think the biomass went from the fire?
I mean, it could have been blown away. It could also have been washed away through snowmelt. There's a lot of factors at play here. One thing that I do want to do for future research is take soil samples and compare phosphorus and nitrogen levels rather than litter and duff, and compare it to before and after a prescribed burn and see if there's more nutrients in the soil through those measures rather than doing litter and duff samples. Any other questions?
Hey, Chris.
Yes, I mean, it sounded like you were on the verge of saying something there at the end. Like this was the conclusion here. So my question, nobody else is going to jump in here. How are you going to round that off? Your research?
Thank you, Chris, for giving me the opportunity. So my conclusion, what I found is that there was a higher sapling density where there was prescribed burns versus those areas that weren't treated. So what I was trying to say is that we have the potential not only to like lower these extreme fires, but also potentially restore the forest health through these baby trees by doing more prescribed burns and better forest practices. There needs to be more data collected. I only have like small sample size, but through that small sample size, you could see a difference in sapling vegetations versus the areas that weren't treated. And with climate change on the rise and carbon being a problem, we need to focus on these carbon storages, which is our forests, and promote healthier forests. Any other questions?
Okay. Well, thanks, Jose.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, Brianna, you're going to be up next. Give the judges a moment.
Okay. Ready to go?
Let's give the judges one more second.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're ready. Go ahead and take it away.
Hi, my name is Brianna Dunsing. I'm a senior here graduating this May from Sierra Nevada University. I am a psychology major. The project that I did for my senior project was a research experiment. It is the impact of facial and neck tattoos on perceived intimacy. For the purpose of this study, social intimacy is defined as having and maintaining positive friendships and relationships. I chose to do this study to help destigmatize and decriminalize the presence of facial and neck tattoos. Previous research has shown a negative association with tattoos. And some examples of that are that those tattooed individuals are less attractive, less or uneducated, and engage in criminal behavior. For this current study, preliminary data was collected from 12 participants, and that was analyzed. It is still continuing. I am conducting my research towards till the end of the semester, hopefully to reach my full amount of participants, which was 60 or 90, either one I can get. Let's see. The experiment was distributed via Guerrilla Experiment Builder, which is basically a website where I can go in and code all of my questions, all of my research that I want to gather. It'll collect everything for me. It'll analyze the data for me, and everything like that. It was extremely beneficial to the study and very helpful to use. Unfortunately, data collection was a bit hindered from COVID-19, so hopefully I can get those last few participants in for sure. For the beginning of the study, the participants first responded to the MSIS, which is the Miller Social Intimacy Scale. It's a 17-item questionnaire which measures the intimacy, intensity, and frequency in the person's personal life. After that, they were randomly assigned to watch one of my 3 videos, which is an individual who either had no tattoos, small facial and neck tattoos, or large facial and neck tattoos. After that, they were then sent to finish the experiment by responding to the FIS, which is the Fear of Intimacy Scale. I had an adapted version for the participants. This measured the levels of intimacy capable of the model as perceived by the participant. We ended up using the Kruskal-Wallis test to analyze my data. There was no significant difference found. Sorry. I had a p-score or a p-value of 0.395. This is potentially due to the small sample sizes and providing not enough statistical power for me yet. Once all data has been collected, I would like to rerun the data using an ANOVA, a one-way, preferably. And so hopefully when I get the rest of my data, it'll be a little bit more conclusive. I would like to use future research for this on a larger, more broad sample population to ensure generalizability and validity of the results. And I believe that the personal presence of tattoos on participants should also be accounted for, in addition to certain biases, such as like incels, who are involuntary celibate individuals. And that's it. Yep.
Thank you, Brianna.
Thanks.
Question. Bob.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for that. I have a question, maybe about terminology or perhaps about the literature that you are kind of involved with psychologically or sociologically. But it's really about why the choice kind of the term intimacy. But before that, it seems like at some level you're concerned with acceptance, social acceptance. So, I wonder if one has primacy, intimacy or acceptance. I wonder if in order to be accepted socially, the idea might be you need to have intimacy with another person, right, before acceptance can happen. So it's really just about the choice of terms, really. Kind of why intimacy, or is the problem rather acceptance? Is there a link between the two? Just any thoughts you have on any of that would be really appreciated, because I'm fascinated with the topic.
Yeah, totally. So there's been previous research which shows that, that intimacy does relate to personal health, longer mortality rates, things like that. Just having that closeness, openness with other individuals, that relationship, something like that, that confidant, someone you can turn to in your times of need. And I've noticed a lot, throughout the years that people react very negatively to individuals with facial and neck tattoos. They're, like I said, deemed ugly or unattractive, less educated, and things like that. People sometimes are scared of them, think that they're unapproachable. So I was curious if intimacy was also something that, off of no actual interaction, people thought those individuals lacked. Leading a little bit more towards, if you are incapable of having a socially intimate relationship, basically having friends or having respect towards individuals, it's kind of leading towards an antisocial personality. Maybe that's why people are deemed guilty or criminals and things like that off of no actual interaction at all. There's been research which shows that individuals who go to court and have tattoos and stuff on their face are just deemed guilty off tops without actually hearing any evidence of anything against them. So I think it's really interesting. There's a lot that can lead into it, and there hasn't been a lot of research done on it yet. So it's kind of like a starting point for intimacy.
I have a question. This is Suzanne. My question is, Brianna, why you chose the images that you did for the tattoo? Because I understand you didn't use someone who already had tattoos. You created the tattoos for the purpose of the study. Did you have a particular image in mind, and why, or why not when you drew the tattoos?
Yeah, of course. So most tattoos do have some sort of meaning behind them. So I tried to go with the most neutral, basic thing I could think of. I did geometric patterns, so I basically just drew lines and dots on my boyfriend to give the illusion of the tattoos. He doesn't actually have tattoos on his face. I didn't want to use someone that was tattooed, that's maybe been seen or is a public figure, that is known to have a relationship. I really wanted to keep this as neutral as possible, keep as many confounds and biases out of it as I could. Drawing a flower or something would maybe give the impression that he's nice or soft, or a cross so that he's religious. So I tried to just avoid all of that.
Richard. Hi, Brianna. It's Richard Geary. Hi. I think you chose a very interesting topic, tattoos. In general, Richard, we're gonna run out of time here. Okay. Never mind. Yeah. Sorry about that. Thank you, Brianna.
Thank you.
Hey, so that concludes our student presentations. We have heard 10 just phenomenal pieces of work. I'm thinking about a way to close this and sort of thinking about kind of running through the breadth of things that we learned about today. We learned about designer flood flows and special travel blogs and morning and time and nutrients and stream and performance and structure and tattoos and bias, composting and biocycling, Olympic Valley, the documentaries, forests and sapling and fire, and finally tortillas and first generation and family. So just really a special collection of work. We can't, one of the things we lose in the virtual environment is audio. I think if we could hear that, we'd hear a lot of people on YouTube just giving a big healthy round. Thank you, students, that was awesome. So, thank you, judges. Thank you, IT team. Thank you, Nancy. This was really special. Just an honor to be part of this. What we're going to do from here is, just in a minute, I'll close down the session. And again, the scores will get tallied. Results will be posted, and cash prizes will be awarded. But more importantly, participants, I just want you to know that, you all you're off to great stuff. This is really special. Wherever you go, just tell whoever you are working for how much you do and how much you can do, and your work speaks volumes of it. So just wish you the best. Everybody have a great short block, and enjoy the spring. Be safe, and thank you so much for being here. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Love y'all. Bye.